Welcome to the Battlefield Show. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and as always, I'm joined by Sammy Boy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Doing fantastic. So hyped for another episode of the Battlefield Show. And today, we're going to be talking about our open beta thoughts, our experiences so far, as well as giving you guys some tips and tricks on what to do when you jump into the open beta. So let's jump right in and get this discussion started. So I wanted to start off, we'll get into some tips and tricks in just a little bit, but I want to start off with kind of the whole process. So what has your experience been starting off, jumping in the beta right off the bat? What are your thoughts?
Overall, man, I'm hooked. I really, really like it. It's obviously very rough around the edges at the moment. There's a lot of bugs and sort of visual issues with like texture popping and stuff like that, but that's to be expected in a beta for the most part. And the only thing that I'm really looking for when I loaded it up for the first time is how the game actually feels, how the gunplay is, how the movement is, stuff like that. And I love it so far. It feels like Battlefield 4 on steroids to me, which is what they literally marketed it as. And yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. Like I said, a few things here and there that need fixing, and there's a few things that I'm not the biggest fan of, but overall, yeah, very, very happy with it.
Same here. So I first started off playing on the Xbox Series X. Something that I totally blanked on until I saw it more recently was that if you do have Game Pass Ultimate, you get EA Play and you get early access on the beta. So yeah. I pre-ordered the game on my PC. Didn't expect I'd be able to play on my console because like I spent $130 on the Ultimate Pro Max Ultimate Incredible Edition, whatever they call it. The one that's most expensive gives you all the things on the PC. So I was like, I'm not really gonna buy it on console. And then they announced that, hey, you get early access on it. So, sweet, okay, that sounds great. So I played it on played it on console first, and overall had a really good experience. I sucked because it's been so long since I've played on console. Like, I kid you not, it's probably been like 3 months, if not longer, since I've played anything on console. Like, I've just been grinding out on Battlefield on PC. But there's a good side. And then I hopped on stream, played it for a while on there. After stream, I played it some more. And then last night, I finished off and played a few rounds on console. And dude, I was popping off. I was playing against PC people, like just completely shredding. I was like, okay, I just had to get used to it
quickly again. Yeah, it's all in the muscle memory. You just had to reactivate it.
Exactly. I died like probably 20 times, and I had 0 kills the first match, and then I got 25 kills and probably only died like 6 times. So pretty good change there.
That's a quick turnaround.
But I just stock it up to all the people on PC were just sucking, and I was able to take advantage of that.
I was very worried about the console version. I knew it would run well on PC, and yeah, I was kind of worried that it would be problematic. But so far, and I've played on PS4 as well, so I've kind of played a little bit everywhere, and I haven't personally run into many issues or anything. So there's obviously like the texture related issues, like there's times when I'll like turn around and like the sky goes black or something, like little bugs like that. But in terms of frame rate and stuff like that, it all seems to be pretty decent so far. So yeah, I'm very happy for the console players. I sort of play half and half between PC and console myself, but yeah, I'm very happy that console players don't have to miss out on the experience.
Well, we had a good indicator when they hopped on Twitter before the announcement and said, look at the game. This is running on an original Xbox One. And it's like, oh, look at you guys go. Like, I want to take a minute here and just commend whoever's decision it was to push that out, because it was a wonderful decision. And I want to give them credits for that, because I mean, that's kind of the opposite of what we've made the comparison before in terms of our concerns, but Cyberpunk did the complete opposite of that, intentionally did not show it. So it's good
Yeah.
to see, hey, this is a screenshot of it running on a base model Xbox One. Not even the One S, the base model. So it's fantastic to see, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I will say that for the lack of communication that they had in that period that was very dry and frustrating, I think they've done really well the last week or so to, constantly keep us updated. They've been tweeting multiple times a day with like little threads of, this is what's already fixed or stuff like that. And so if we're all gonna, you and I, we were jumping on them when they weren't doing well. So I think it's only fair to praise them when they do well, and hopefully they just stick with it, man, because that's all we need. I don't need much communication. I just want, for them to acknowledge that, this thing's broken, but we're working on it, stuff like that. And yeah, the last week or so, it's been exactly like if they just stay like this, and obviously there will be dry patches where, there's just natural dry patches in the game, but if they do what they've done the last week in terms of communication, I'll be a very happy man, I think.
I agree. And like you said, we don't want to kind of just not give them the pat on the back when they did something good and only focus on the negatives. We did have that really rough, dry period with no communication, and it was just a terrible handling of the whole situation. But now that they have been doing good, I just want to take a moment, highlight those positives, and say, hey, good job, guys. You're doing what needs to be done. Now keep it up. And this is something that, we're all hesitant towards. We're all like, okay, yeah, they're doing good now, but like what happens after the beta ends? Yeah. So I think that's something that we'll definitely keep an eye on. Even if it's like sharing replays or talking about what they learned spread out through the process until the game gets launched, I think they'll be perfectly fine to keep on communicating and keep stuff going. Like I think there's definitely an opportunity and a clear runway for that.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like we said, they don't need to do much as long as they're, keeping us somewhat updated. Then yeah, that's all we really need, I think.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna get into bugs and stuff like that in a little bit. But I want to talk about kind of our positive experiences with the game and some of the things that we've been greatly happy with in terms of what's been going on. We'll talk about then some of the bugs and some issues, some of the concerns that we have on the game as it goes forward. And then we want to give you all tips and tricks on the beta. So that's kind of going to be the schedule or the run of show for this episode. So let's jump in and talk about some of our positive experiences with the game, and then we'll get into negatives. And then we'll rise back up with the tips and tricks. So that's going to be the journey today. What is like a couple things that you've been so excited about and so happy to see with this return and kind of finally having this opportunity to play the game?
I think for me the biggest part is that it feels like Battlefield. I've already in the beta had so many moments that I'm like, what is going on? There's a tornado, the rocket blew up. That is what has always made Battlefield stand out from the rest for me, where there's those, the typical only in Battlefield moments. And literally in a beta with one map and one mode, I've already had like 20 of those moments where I've seen even just the rocket launching by itself where it doesn't blow up. I've seen like a jet try and chase it down, and like it's just funny that it feels like Battlefield, and it definitely feels a bit different. I think the gunplay and movement and stuff, it does feel like almost like a new iteration of Battlefield. Like it's definitely gone in a slightly different direction, but that core sandbox like fun experience is still there, and that's for me. That's really all I want, is just good fun, funny things happening throughout the game. And yeah, I've had a lot of that already, so that's probably my main positive. What about you?
You stole mine. I was going to use that too.
Damn it, we should have worked this out earlier.
Yeah, okay. Okay, a little huddle here. Okay, what are you going to do? But there's some other things too, but I really want to highlight the incredible idea. We'll get into bugs and stuff but in spite of all of the bugs and in spite of all the technical issues with this beta, I think they have captured the feel of Battlefield very, very well. Yeah. They've incorporated new aspects. They've taken inspiration from new games. They've taken, the more I play this game and the more like I was playing it, and my fiance was like, yo, this looks like kind of like Apex. It's like,
Yeah.
yes. I was
Yeah.
playing McKay too, and I was basically I was using the zip line to get faster across the stretch of open space, and it's like, yep, this is a lot like Apex, and it's got that kind of vibe. It's got all of these. It's taking a lot of inspiration from these games that have spun up and done very well, but also keeping that Battlefield feel, making sure that they aren't losing the core gameplay ideas that Battlefield has become known for. And it's just been so fantastic to me to kind of see these moments. Like, there was this one moment I was on the top of the skyscraper. A helicopter had like rammed down in this group of people. And then another, like, it exploded. People died. I got some damage taken. And then this jet on my team swooped in and did the same thing on the people that jumped out of the helicopter before it exploded. And then another helicopter came in above that. And like, I'm just sitting there like, oh my gosh, like, this is a moment that can only happen in a Battlefield game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you nailed that with, like, it's taken the aspects from other games, and you can clearly tell, like, that it's got those aspects, but it hasn't lost its identity. It's still Battlefield. It's not like we're playing an Apex copy. It's got elements from it, but those moments are still there. And like you said, they can only happen in Battlefield. I've never played any other shooter that has that mix of, you know, games like Call of Duty and Apex and stuff, and it has that, like, really good gameplay, but then it has a jet flying into a helicopter that's just blown up and stuff like that. Just doesn't happen in other games. So, yeah, like I said, that's easily for me my biggest takeaway is that, it feels like Battlefield, and that's really all I want at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I wanted to highlight is the plus system. Oh my gosh.
Oh, man.
I love it so much. Like, I saw snippets and leaks of it from other places, and I was like, okay, this looks really cool, like the UI thing. It's one thing of like, oh man, that looks really nice, and it's a whole other thing to be like using it. It's so intuitive, it's so fantastic, it is so incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, I agree, man. I remember I've always said about the Behemoth system in Battlefield 1 that's my favorite, like, implementation into a Battlefield game, and I think the plus system already has overtaken that. I think it is it's so much fun to use. There's times when, you know, I'm running into a building and I take off the scope and get a few kills, and then I go outside and I see a guy running across the field, and I put on the scope again and take him out and stuff, and it works so well. And like you said, it's so satisfying when you, like, we're only just scratching the surface right now. We can't even put our own attachments in it, for example. Like, when the game comes out, we'll be able to choose what scopes you want in the plus system and stuff. So the fact that I already love it this much, and we're getting essentially like the skeleton of it, it's so promising, man. I'm absolutely in love with it. I think that in terms of gameplay, I think that is my favorite thing in the whole beta, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Oh, dude, right there with you. It makes you feel pro. You know, there's certain things that you do in a game that make you feel incredibly pro. Like when using Battlefield, for example, when you're riding into a battle, you jump out of the vehicle and you start firing and you get a bunch of kills. That's something that makes you feel professional, something that makes you feel very competent. And this is kind of a more subtle version, kind of in the same vein of like, okay, depending on the situation I'm in. Okay, I'm getting close quarters. I don't necessarily need the big 4x zoom. Okay, I'm not going to use it, take it off. Also, in terms of like the different mags that you can use, something that I had a concern with before I made this discovery, something I had a concern with is I was consistently running out of ammo. I was like, man, good gosh, I like never run out of ammo in other Battlefield games. And then someone, Yepper in the chat was like, yo, all of the other mags also have extra, like they're full. I was like, what? Yeah, if you equip the other ones, you have another full round, like you just started over. Mm-hmm. So once I discovered that, it was like, okay, no, that's not a concern of mine at all. It's so good.
Yeah, it's that's something that I'm not sure if that's like meant to be the case, but initially I was like, oh, that's kind of broken. But then, like I've been the same. I've been running out of ammo all the time. I don't know if maybe my aim is just terrible or something, but I've been running out of ammo like nearly every life, and I've actually just been bringing the ammo crate with me because I'm so consistently running out of ammo. But yeah, once I found that out, even though initially I was like, oh, that's a bit they need to fix that. But if that is intentional, then yeah, I'm really excited by it. And yeah, I think overall, man, it's just from when they announced the Plus system, I thought, oh, this is really cool, and it had that, I guess, worry of like, will it be overpowered? Will it be, because there's no animation, so it's just like almost instant, and that was something that people were like, oh, that's going to be broken. You can just make a gun that does everything, but it doesn't feel like the guns change that much. It's more just like preference, and it makes you feel more comfortable more than actually making the gun better. So, I'm in love with it so far. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of how it all works. There is the weird bug with that in between matches, it resets. So if you have like a specific loadout in between rounds, that's something that they're aware of, and they're going to be adjusting once the launch actually happens. But like, I think finishing off in terms of the positives before we jump into are some bugs and issues and concerns that we may have going in. I will say something that I was pleasantly surprised about is the map. I think they did a really good job in terms of varying the layout. There are some open spaces where it's like, oh, okay, this is definitely something that they had a bunch of filler space. They needed to make it big to reach that size. But overall, I think they did a really good job. The skyscraper is definitely the center, and then from there, it spreads out. Like, there are certain areas of the map that are the last ones to fall, but the skyscraper is that one that if you want to get into some battle quickly, you go to the skyscraper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the map too. I initially, in my like initial review of the game, I kind of said like, oh, I think it's maybe a little bit too big. But the more I've played it, I think I've just kind of gotten used to it, and the call-in system helps with getting around the map too. So I think the top part, like the part near, sort of in between the rocket and the tower, I think that's a little bit too open. I would love to see, like, on that big strip, to see, some shipping containers or something, just something to actually allow you to sort of get across to the other side.
If you go there, you're dead.
Yeah, if you run across that cement, you are not surviving to the other side. But other than that, I'm really happy with the map, and it looks stunning as well. I think the looks of the map, in most cases, I don't really care, but after playing a lot of games where, I've played Warzone all last year, and the map is very like dull and dreary, and having these vibrant, like beautiful looking maps, it really does make a difference more than I thought it did. So I can't wait to get my hands on the other maps as well. I think every one that we've seen looks really, really vibrant and exciting. So I'm very keen to get stuck into the full game.
Right there with you. I can't wait for it. So now let's jump in to some bugs that we experienced, some concerns we may have for the full release. I just want to start off and say, my goodness, this is buggier than I thought it would be. But unlike other betas where, like, I'd say if we want to throw Call of Duty Vanguard under the bus again, it had one of those kind of betas where it was incredibly buggy, but not in like an enjoyable way. And I think they kind of struck that balance and made a good decision to pick this specific branch off of the main build. But like, it's buggy, man. Oh my goodness.
Mm. I'll be honest. I actually think maybe I'm like in the minority here. I actually think it's less buggy than I was expecting. I was expecting this to be a bit of a mess, to be honest. And
really?
Maybe that's why I'm a bit more happy with it in terms of bugs than a lot of people are, because I was going into this thinking like, oh, there's going to be so many things wrong, and there definitely are a lot of bugs, but the ones that I've come across so far haven't been like, I haven't actually come across any like game breaking bugs. Most of them are just like visual bugs and stuff. There's been I don't know, there was one time I couldn't, when I first entered the game, I couldn't choose my loadout. I had to just spawn, and it gave me a random class, but then once it died, it was fine. So that's obviously, I guess you would say that's a genuine issue, because you can't choose your weapon and stuff. And then, yeah, I can't even think of any other bugs that I've had that have been like, that have cost me a death or that have ruined the experience. Most of them are just like funny ones where like the people have their parachute permanently deployed and stuff like that, which it just, those types of things, to me, I feel like most of that will be fixed probably already, if not then by launch, and then there'll still be bugs in the full game, I'm sure. But yeah, for me personally, I've actually been pretty happy with the bugs. And the thing is, I don't know if I've just had a pretty lucky experience, because I have seen so many people saying like it's so bugged that they can't, like they're having trouble even playing. So I think I'm actually just kind of I've been
you
lucky.
have been smiled upon the EA gods.
Yeah, because I've had a lot of people saying the PS4 version is borderline unplayable in terms of like frame rate and stuff.
As well.
And then for me, like I played it on stream yesterday and it was completely fine. So I do think that I've just probably had a bit of a luckier experience. I'm not sure why, because I thought it would be kind of worse for me, because in Australia our internet is obviously, that I was thinking like, oh man, this is going to be a rough couple of days. But yeah, I think I've just had a lucky time so far. So it's hard for me to gauge, I guess, how buggy it actually is, really.
Yeah. Well, I can make up for that for you. I've had quite the experience. There was a few lives where I just could not jump. I tried to activate the call-in system, bringing up the tablet, and I got paused. Like I was stuck in the animation. The only thing I could do was melee. So I went around entire life not being able to use any of my weapons, and I eventually found someone, tried to kill them with my melee, it did not work, and died and reset, and I was able to get back in. But since then, because I've had issues so many times with the call-in system, I've not been using it because it's so inconsistent that it has hurt my experiences. So it's something that has limited my ability to enjoy the larger map. Because you do need those vehicles to get in, especially at the beginning. So that's definitely something. I had this weird bug where my classes as well as my weapons would randomly switch around mid-game. So I'd be running around and all of a sudden I'm Maria Falk, or all of a sudden my weapon turned into a sniper. And then I had a really terrible bug. So like the first day wasn't bad, but they did something in the second day of the beta where like, I don't know what they did, but they need to change it back because it was so much buggier in this time that I played this day than it was the previous day. I had this terrible bug where if like when someone dies, their weapon would fall next to them, and I could not revive them. I would hold E, and it kept on switching my weapon versus going into the revive animation. So that's something that I found very weird. And was super frustrating because like we're standing around these teammates that like Dinko and I are in voice chat, and some other teammates weren't. So it's like we're just standing around laughing at them, but we're like both trying to revive them. So we're like, we're so sorry, we're not trying to play with you. This guy's on the ground for 30 seconds straight while me and him are trying to revive him while our weapons get switched. And it's like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that is one actually that's happened to me, but it's happened in Battlefield 5 as well a lot, and I think that is a flaw with the revive system. I don't know why they have pick up a weapon and revive as the same button.
Yeah.
I do personally think they need to go back to having like defibs as a thing, because that was always the fix to it. Like in Battlefield 1, you don't have that issue because you have the little like syringe or the whatever it is.
Yeah.
And obviously Battlefield 3 and 4, you've got the defibs. Whereas in Battlefield 5, I had that all the time. I'd try and revive a friend, and like I was on the mics with them, and I'm like, oh, sorry, mate, I've just picked up your gun. You're going to have to die for now, and I'll just have to get my gun back. So I think that is something they really do need to change, because that's very frustrating, especially as someone who's always enjoyed playing a medic. Like, you have to like run up to them and then be very careful where you aim, and like in the heat of battle, that is very frustrating, having to sort of like pick your spot where you're going to pick to revive them, because otherwise you pick up their weapon instead, and it's that's something I've hated since Battlefield 5, to be honest.
Yeah, even if it's like, honestly, if they even just do switch it to R and have it's better to reload accidentally than switch your weapon. At least then you can't, like, there is no weird stopping of another animation pulling you out of that revival.
Yeah, they definitely need to. I'm not sure how they will, but they definitely need to look into that. And I'm sure, because we've been through it with Battlefield 5, people are going to be sick of it straight away. And I think there'll be enough noise that hopefully they look into fixing that somehow.
Yeah. Speaking of noise, we've had quite a bit of noise made around the lack of scoreboard. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
this?
I'm definitely not a fan of how it is at the moment. I don't hate it. For me, the scoreboard, like those smaller things aren't, the end of the world for me. But it is. I do want to just have it how it is in the previous games, where, or even if they have the screen that they have now, but then there's like you press another button to bring up the proper one or something. Like it's I don't really like how it is because I do like to see not just in my squad, but in the whole scheme of the lobby where I'm doing. Like if I'm going nuts and getting 30 or 40 kills and I feel like I'm doing really well, I want to see if I'm near the top. I want to see if I'm doing well or not. So it's not the end of the world to me, but it's definitely one of those things that I do hope they eventually change it. I'm not sure if it's like a beta related thing. I don't imagine it is because I don't know why they would have that and then change it for the game unless they've already kind of thought about that themselves or something. But yeah, that's definitely something I'm not too happy about as well.
Yeah. I know all of the UI team are lovely people, but I think they really need to play the game more in terms of like a critical perspective of saying, does this work? Not do I like this? In terms of visually, I think it's leaning too much on the visual versus the actual practical use case.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's UI is a very hard thing because I'm actually studying UI at the moment. And
Same here.
It's a hard thing to like do when there are things that initially seem logical and it looks good and everything, but you have to rigorously test it to see like, okay, in this situation, if I'm under the pump, is it still viable? If I'm getting shot at, does that UI still work? Stuff like that. So I think, like you said, I think they definitely. I'm sure they play a lot, but I think they need to maybe even have like a play test where all of the developers, even the ones who aren't UI developers, like they sort of critique it and as a player themselves, they give their feedback on it because you don't need to understand UI to know when it doesn't work. That's one of the things. Like, it's hard to criticize certain elements of video games because we aren't developers, but when it comes to UI, like it's such an important thing and everyone uses it every game that I don't think you actually need to know much about it to know when it isn't working. So I agree with that. I think they just need to try and make it a bit more, I guess, responsive and intuitive to where it's just easy and it works as intended and it looks good how it is, but it definitely needs to just match the game a bit more, I think.
I agree. I'm going to repeat myself here. It's just not very practical. It also, like, I could make it in like 5 seconds in Photoshop or Illustrator. So it's very simple. It doesn't give a whole lot of details there. In terms of like legibility, in terms of kind of usability in the moment, it's very hard. When I'm trying to see my scoreboard or see how many kills I have, and I have tab pressed and I'm like searching through to see what this massive like pop-up window is, like it does not need to be that big. Like it does not need to fill 75% of the screen. It can be smaller. It's fine, especially on PC. Maybe on console it's a different one, but on PC, like it can definitely be a lot smaller. But when I'm over there like 15 seconds, like trying to figure out what the heck's going on while I'm tabbing in and out so no one kills me, I think there is an issue there.
For sure.
What are your thoughts on the overall like gunplay feel? Because I know some people have been kind of crapping on the snipers, but like I've been playing a bunch of the snipers and it's not too bad. I think they need to adjust to the long range stuff because the long range stuff is really jank. It's not good.
I think the gunplay overall, I'm really happy with it. The weapons feel like beefy and they feel like they're real weapons. They don't. I think like the sound design really helps as well. It all feels like it just feels like you're actually shooting a weapon. I do agree with the sniping. The like velocity is a little bit off to where I'm aiming where I feel it should be a headshot, and it's not a headshot, and it's happening a lot. And so I think the sniping needs a little bit of work. But in terms of like the ARs and SMGs and stuff, I think the gunplay is really, really good actually. So I'm sure it'll be tweaked a little bit again before launch, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with where it is right now. And I just hope they get around to the sniping because sniping is one of my favorite parts of any shooter really. So I just hope that they can make it a bit not easier, but just easier to tell if you're going to get a headshot because I'm sitting there sniping dudes for like a minute and just missing every shot, and I adjust every time, and then by the end of it, I'm like, you know what? Nah, I'm just going to go somewhere else.
Especially in a game where it's so important to snipe, with the size of the map being so large, the size or the span in between objectives, you need to have a long range strategy for the game. Unless you're jumping on top of the skyscraper, unless you're doing these specific things in certain locations, anything other than that, you need to have a long range. So I think it's very important that they get that right because, well, there may be people in DICE that are like tired of sniper campers. Like when you have a map that big, the only viable option is a sniper, and to limit it at long range is just not the move.
Yeah, I think there's enough, different ways if that is a thing. Because I remember that actually happened at one point with Call of Duty. They got sick of people sniping because people were running around like quickscoping and stuff, and they kind of nerfed the hell out of it. And I think if they want to nerf it, there's other ways you can do it. Where, for example, I think it's actually really good. The glare on the snipers is like crazy. Like if you can see them across the map if they're looking at you. And I think that's really good. So there's other ways of trying to, I guess, get rid of the camping sniper because no one likes that. I don't know how people enjoy doing that, and two, as a player running around, you don't like when people are just sitting back camping. But you do need to make it viable, and a lot of people do. Like when I snipe, I don't sit back camping. I'm usually like fairly aggressive, and so they need to make that viable for the people who actually play. I guess that's not really how a sniper is intended to play, but that's how the game's intended to be played, I guess. So, yeah, hopefully they tweak it a little bit and just make it a bit more. It feels like somewhat inconsistent, I would say, and I hope they make it a bit more consistent.
Yep, I agree with you there. In terms of we're leaning towards the tips and tricks side of things, let's jump right in to talk about some tips and tricks that we may have for the open beta. As this episode is going to be coming out, it is going to be the first day of the open beta where everyone can jump in. So there's going to be a lot more people hopping in for the first time. They may be looking for some starter tips and tricks and some higher level tips and tricks. So I want to kick this off with probably one of my something that I had to really learn. I am someone who does not like vehicle play in Battlefield games. Just not my thing. I don't like it. I know other people do, and you can enjoy it as much as you want to. It's not my thing.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Battlefield 2042, you have to at least start off in a vehicle or wait in the loading screen until someone with a vehicle gets to where you want to go. Yeah,
I've actually noticed that too. Yeah, the start of the round is the size of the map is very noticeable at the start of the round. This is not so much tips and tricks, but a way of fixing that I feel is that they should start the game with each team already has half of the sectors each. So the flags are captured and then you can spawn in the middle of the map if you want to. I think that's just a way of fast tracking. I know that it would feel weird because it is fun to everyone starts at the headquarters and then you've got to progress through the map. I get that, but it is. I'm very curious to see how Breakaway works because this is a medium-sized map, so it's going to take you 5 minutes to get to the flags on Breakaway. So that's my little fix for it. But yeah, back to the tips and tricks. That's spot on. I think we need to accept that vehicles are a part of the game. I've always been that guy who just runs around on foot. I'll occasionally jump in a tank if I see one just for a bit of fun, but I'm not really a vehicle person. But I think we just have to kind of go all right, they're in the game. I'm gonna just use one and kind of get used to it a little bit. And yeah, I don't think you need to rely on them for gameplay, but just to get where you want to go, I think we're gonna have to make the most of them, and especially the call-in system once it's actually working. Because there is those couple of bugs with it. I think that's a very important tip, because that's one thing, especially with the map too. I've heard a lot of people saying, "Oh, the map's way too big," but I think that's because people aren't using vehicles, so they're running the whole way across the map, and like, yeah, that's going to take you a long time to do that. So, an easy way to fast track your movement and get into the action is just using the call-in system or finding vehicles around the place and just trying to get there a lot faster that way.
Yeah, it's one of those things I had to suck up my pride and be like, okay, I will jump into a vehicle. I will rush across the map. Or another strategy to use is just to wait. To wait to spawn in until one of your teammates or a point gets captured where you want to go, and then you just go there. So there are those strategies to be used to kind of stretch things out. What's another tip or trick that you think people would really want to know, especially at the beginner level?
I think, like we've already talked about the plus system, but I think making the most of that is going to be really important, just to, especially in this build, because you can't actually like choose attachments in the actual build. You'll be able to like you can in previous games. You can sort of have like a pre-loadout and then you can change it mid-game, but in this build, you kind of like have to use it to put on your scope and all that kind of thing. So I think just getting used to that early. It took me a minute to figure out the buttons for it and stuff. I was actually in the early like playtest before the game went live, because we were on PC. I was literally using my controller to bring it up, and then I just used my mouse on the PC to equip the different attachments, because I didn't understand the buttons initially. If anyone's having trouble with it, think of the plus system as the buttons on your controller. So depending on what you're on, it's A, B, X, Y on Xbox, or square, triangle, circle, and X on PlayStation. And essentially the direction that button is facing on your controller is where it's facing on the plus system.
So Y would be
does the
your
scopes. Yeah.
Yep.
It took me a bit to figure that out. I won't say how long it took me.
I am on the same page, buddy. I got so mad. Like, I played for a whole round not even being able to pull it up. And then that night I was like, okay, I'm just going to sit here for... I also do not want to disclose how long I sat there. But I was sitting there like pressing every single button. I'm like, this shouldn't work. And then I used it. I was like, oh, no. Okay, that's how you do it. Okay.
It was quite embarrassing. Once I figured it out, I was like, oh, that actually makes so much sense. And I don't know why I didn't think of that straight away. I think I was using, so it's like L1 or LB to bring it up. And then I was using like the D-pad.
Yeah, I thought it was the D-pad.
Pressing A on Xbox to so I was like holding left on the D-pad and then like pressing A to see if that would make it move across on the left or something. And I was just sitting there, and it was changing things, because obviously A works. So things were moving around. I'm like, oh, it's like kind of working. Is it bugged? I don't know what's wrong. And then the first game, like I think I actually got frustrated with it and literally just pressed every button on the controller, and then it like clicked, and I was like,
that's how I had to do it.
Okay. And then, once you've figured it out, it's so easy. Like, it's so intuitive. But, that's definitely a tip, to just get the hang of that early, because not only just for... Even if you never use it in-game, you obviously need to equip your attachments at the start. But then even further, like, you definitely want to... if you're running a red dot site and then you see someone who's, I don't know, 100 meters away and your scope isn't quite useful, like, you want to get used to changing that, because it really does help. I've found a lot of times that I'm probably picking up an extra like 5 kills a game just because I can use a longer scope or stuff like that. So that's probably my main tip, is just to get the hang of that early, I think.
Yep, it's super important to use. It's super important to adjust your gameplay because of the large scale of the map, as well as the difference in terms of gameplay depending on where you are on that map. It's super important to adjust your playstyle to it. You're not going to want a long-range sniper when you're in close-range battle on top of the skyscraper. Like, even if you are using a SMG or an AR rifle, whatever you're using, like, it does not have to even be a sniper. But if you want that extra range and kind of sight, you can equip the 4x zoom. But when you're in those closer quarter things, unequip it. But kind of following up just going back a little bit, when I was trying to find out how to use the plus system, I was like using all of my toggles because I was like, okay, if I hold this, and will the cursor pop up? Like, is that how I do it?
Yeah, I think on the screen they need to say, like, that was my issue with it, that there was no, like, indicator, maybe above or in the middle of each, you know, where they all meet, for example, you could have the buttons there so that it's easy to see or something, because it definitely they didn't make it easy, but yeah, once you figure it out, luckily it's very easy to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a discovery period. That's rough.
Yeah.
I'd say kind of another beginner one before we get into kind of higher level stuff. Something to definitely keep in mind is switch between the specialists. Make sure that you're trying out these different specialists. Because of a bug, it will definitely help you with that in terms of switching you in between when you didn't originally intend to. But definitely try out the different play styles. One of the more popular ones for sure is Webster McKay, just because of his extra maneuverability. The zip line is just a huge part of his character, and I don't know how many times I was the only person in my squad that was not Webster McKay.
Yeah, he's easily the most common from what I've seen so far, because the way he can get around the map it's a lot of fun, but it's also just very helpful in general.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's you can get to locations that you see people so frequently as other characters. Like, I know I've seen people get up there. The reason they're up there is because they're Webster McKay. So I think something that may be good, kind of just discussion points in terms of changes that they could implement, is adjusting how easy it is to get on top of those roofs, because unless you're Webster McKay, you can't get up there.
Yeah.
So maybe making it a little more easy for other characters to get up there could be a good idea.
I think that they need anywhere that he can get, other than maybe like on a random like pole. I've seen people like climbing up on little like light poles and stuff, but any building like that he can get on, I think they need to make it that, yeah, anyone can get on. It just obviously takes longer. Like there needs to be a ladder or a jump spot or something. Because honestly, at this point, I'm almost exclusively using McKay just because he can just get to so many better positions. And this is a whole other topic that I feel like we nearly need to save for another podcast, to be honest with it.
Let's save that topic. The
specialist system for me has got some flaws, and that's probably my main issue with the game at the moment, is that I feel like I can play McKay and essentially do everything that anyone else can do as well. So I can heal my teammates with a health crate, and I can still revive squad mates. So I almost feel like I'm just a slightly worse version of Falk, but I have a grapple hook, so I'm obviously way faster and stuff like that. That's a flaw that I think the specialist system has, is that it is actually too open. And since they announced it, I've been like really, really keen for it. And now I feel like it's gone too far, and I think that they need to like lock different attachments behind each like class, because there's obviously still the class system behind the specialists. There was one moment, I showed this off in my review of the beta. I was playing as Falk. I revived a teammate, then I ran like 20 meters and blew up a tank, and I just felt like I can do everything, and I don't want that to be the case. I think they need to keep it somewhat structured. I'm fine with being able to use every gun. I think that's really good, but I don't think I should be able to play as like a medic and blow up tanks at the same time, because that just, to me, it just feels like you're a jack of all trades. And when I think of a specialist, I think of someone who specializes in one thing, and all they're specializing in is doing literally everything at this point. So,
yep.
Yeah, that might be a topic for because I could go on a whole rant about it, but it might be a topic for another podcast, I think. But yeah, that's something that I'm definitely not true. That's probably my main like flaw with the game so far, I think.
Yeah, we will definitely dive in deeper on that as we get more experience too in a future episode of the podcast. So I have some thoughts as well, and we can dive deeper on that then. In terms of higher level play, you're someone that has a lot more experience over time in Battlefield than I do. what are some of the higher level tips and tricks that you would give people who they may have played Battlefield 1, but they skip Battlefield 5, or they played it in the beginning, or they're jumping from Call of Duty to this? What are some of those higher level play stuff that you think people should know?
I think for anyone who's anyone who's played Battlefield like continuously will pick up most things. But I think if you're coming from like Call of Duty or another game, this game does actually have quite a bit of recoil, and it's got that like sort of skill gap in the gunplay where you do really need to like tap the trigger. You can't just like hold down. I mean, it depends on the gun you're using, obviously, but if you're using like an assault rifle, one of the main things that I would say for those people coming from other games is that, yeah, you really need to tap the trigger and just like stay on target easier that way, rather than, because I've played a lot of Warzone, I've kind of got into that habit of you just literally hold the trigger, because that game, the recoil is essentially non-existent for certain weapons, and there's also a lot of aim assist in Warzone, so it's like you just see someone, you hold the trigger and just try and stay as on target as you can, and it works. Whereas in this game, you do need to sort of take your time with it a bit more, because I've kind of fallen into that trap myself where I'm just holding the trigger and I'll miss. There's been times I've missed literally every shot, like in a whole magazine. So that's probably, it's not really, I don't know if I'd say it's a high level tip, but just something that for people coming, there's going to be a lot of people that this is their first Battlefield game, or they haven't, like you said, they haven't played in years or something. Make sure to tap the trigger, because that's something that will get you a lot of kills compared to if you're just holding it. You're just gonna go through that ammo and you're gonna miss a lot of shots.
You're going to have to be praying really hard to get those shots if you're trying to spray and pray.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Like, again, Battlefield 5, even Battlefield 1, jumping in and playing a bunch of that recently, just prepping myself for Battlefield 2042. And good gravy. You can literally there's certain weapons, hold, fire, and just keep on swinging back and forth, and you're good to go. The recoil in this game is very intense. It's something that people definitely need to adjust their strategies for. That's something that I know personally I had to kind of change up, because going from Battlefield 5 to this, it's like, whoa, these weapons actually have a little bit of a kick to them. Okay.
Yeah, it's probably the main thing with the gunplay that I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think it does add that kind of skill gap to where you can't just spray and pray. Obviously, with like an SMG, you kind of can, because that's what they're built for more than anything. But I do think
you still have to be good with keeping that recoil in check.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing for the game. It adds that tiny little skill curve that it's not like it's a drastic thing that like people will never be able to pick up. Like it'll take you 3 games to realize like, oh, I just need to tap the trigger instead of holding it. But it just adds that bit of a skill curve to where if you and I are in the same lobby and you're holding the trigger and I'm tapping it, I'm probably going to beat you in that gunfight. And I think that is something that is really, they generally do it pretty well in Battlefield compared to where Call of Duty, it's really just who shoots first is going to get the kill. So I'm happy with it, but it just does take a little bit to get the hang of, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So let's say you're someone that plays Call of Duty all the time. You're like, okay, let's jump over it and see what all this Battlefield stuff's about. I think one of the big things is the gunplay and the maneuverability is getting closer and closer to kind of the Call of Duty tightness and Call of Duty mobility to a point that's very, very interesting. So something that I think a lot of Battlefield players won't really do that Call of Duty players will take advantage of, or even if you're jumping from Apex, is the sliding and the maneuverability and going in between crouching and standing and getting a lot more mobile in that way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I actually feel the same, that it is feeling, the movement does feel, it feels very similar to Apex, where if you slide, I've noticed if you slide downstairs, you know how in Apex, like if you slide down a hill, you'll just keep sliding.
Yes.
It's actually the same in this game, where if you're sliding down a steep hill or a set of stairs or something, you'll just keep going, and it just doesn't stop. So I do agree with that. It is feeling in a good way, I think. I've heard a lot of people saying like, oh, it's just a copy of Call of Duty. It's definitely not, but it is feeling closer to Call of Duty, to where it's like a lot more fluid and fast paced, and I guess less clunky. Not that Battlefield has been clunky in the past, but it just feels less clunky than it has been. And so I think getting used to sliding is going to be something that people really need to get the hang of. One tip that, and this goes for any game, or any shooter, I should say. One tip that I have is to change your button layout if you're on controller to tactical, or I think it's called alternate in this game, and that changes your crouch button from B or circle to the right stick, and that allows you to not actually have to take your thumb off the stick to crouch and to slide and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's what I have
really,
in Apex.
Yeah, that's what really allows you to like slide around a corner and shoot at the same time, because you can still aim. Obviously, the right stick's for aiming, so you can essentially control all your movement with the sticks, and you never have to take your fingers off the sticks. Whereas, or I guess to jump you do, but in the like default layout, you kind of have to like run and then take your finger off the stick to press B or circle, and then put it back on the stick and then aim, and it's just a bit like clunky that way. So that's a tip that I say for literally every game. It'll feel weird initially. I remember when I first changed it way back, like early Call of Duty days, I changed it and I was like, oh, I don't think this is the way to do it. But once you get the hang of it, I'm telling you, you'll never go back. In the first setting I change in any shooter is putting my button layout to tactical. So that's probably my main tip for like movement and stuff, is that, yeah, being able to slide around corners, or if you're getting like chased really quickly, you can slide behind cover or whatever. That is so much easier with that button layout. So that's something that it'll feel weird, and it'll make you'll probably do worse for the first like couple of days, but
Yeah.
in the long run, it's 100% worth it. And I feel like everyone who changes, they go, oh, can't believe I didn't do that earlier, because it's really, really important not to do, I think.
Yeah, and like you're gonna use your crouch and slide much more than you are your melee, so it's a really good switch.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I don't know if I'm the only person who is experiencing this, but I played starting off right off the bat, played the beta on the Series X, and there was this weird, like, noticeable kind of lag between when I pressed the button and when there was either I slid or if I crouched. Have you experienced this at all, or is this something that's specifically on mine?
I don't think I have, so it might be, maybe it's like a bug, or I don't know what it would. Yeah, I don't know what else it would be, because I know you would have been playing on a monitor, wouldn't you?
No, it was my TV.
Oh, so one thing that TVs have, I actually ran into this early on, like back in the COD days as well, that they sometimes have a slight delay with the like input. So you'll even sometimes notice it with like aiming. A good way to test it is to load into a game and to just like essentially like flick the stick to where it moves, and see how long from when you flick it to when the character actually moves on the screen. If it's not instant, then that's something to do with the monitor more than anything. So that could be it, but it also could just be a bug. Like there's enough bugs that it could just be something in the game. I'm not too sure.
It's the only game I've noticed it with, and like it's only the crouch, so I don't know. It probably is a bug.
Yeah, if it's just crouching, it must be a bug. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely something. It's interesting, all these things. Is it me or is it the game? I don't know.
Yeah, I was like that early too. With like, I was getting a lot of deaths early that I was like, oh, I feel like I should have won that gunfight. Is that me, or is there hit registration issues or whatever? And it's I think in the beta that's always like, you're almost like paranoid about like, is this do I suck, or is the game having issues, or what's going on?
Yeah, hit registration is a whole different thing, which I have had struggled with as well.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that is easily fixed, and it's one of those things that this is a beta. Before we end this episode, I do want to kind of end it off on this topic. What are your thoughts around, I did like a review video that came out today as we're recording it, yesterday as this will come out, and it's interesting to see that rumors and leaks have said this specific beta build is about 3 months or maybe even older. What are your thoughts around that, considering that the game got delayed an extra month? This beta is a 3-month-old build. I think it's very interesting to see this level of bugginess and in a build this late in the game. What are your thoughts?
In the early preview, so we got to play the beta on the Monday and it came out on the Wednesday. In that, Freeman did confirm it. I think he said it was roughly 2 months old, I think is what he said. I'd have to probably check that, but I remember he did confirm it is a little bit older. In terms of whether that, because I've seen a lot of people saying the same thing, if it's not way older than that and there's this many bugs, does that mean there's going to be heaps in the actual build? Generally betas are around that time, sometime, give or take a month or so, but they generally do branch off early. It's not something that they just kind of take a really, recent build of the game and make the beta out of that. So I'm not too worried about it being buggier than it should be or anything like that. Like I said, and again, I think I've had a lucky experience, so maybe it's just I have a skewed vision of it, but
you've been blessed by the EA gods, man.
It feels about as buggy as a beta should to me. The same thing happened with Vanguard. I played that, probably played, I don't know, 10 or more hours of the Vanguard beta, and that had about the same, probably if not more actually, than this one does. So especially considering the scale, of the Vanguard maps are you could fit every one of those in the beta in probably the top section of Orbital. It was a very small thing. So I'm not too worried. I think there will be bugs. I think people need to just
it's a DICE game.
Yeah, the Frostbite engine is just always like that. It's just, I think it always will be. There'll always be bugs. But they've already confirmed that a lot of the ones that we're seeing are actually fixed already in the actual build of the game. And then the good thing about the game being delayed is that this beta is now, 5 weeks away by the end of it from the actual launch. So
yes,
that just means that they can actually use that data a bit better, and they will hopefully have time to start to fix a lot of those bugs. And a lot of them are probably there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the game. It's just a lot of things that are for example, the call-in system thing. That's probably an issue that's fixable in a week or two, compared to if
exactly
things were genuinely busted. It's obviously going to take months to fix it. So I'm definitely not too worried. Obviously there will be bugs, and I'm always going to have that level of panic about what's the game going to launch just because of their track record. But honestly, after the beta, I'm actually feeling more optimistic than I was. I'm okay, I think it's in a good state, and there'll be bugs when it launches, as long as they fix them within, even just 3 months. If it's a little bit buggy for the first couple of months, I'm okay with that. But I don't think it's too much of an issue in terms of the age of the build that we're playing or anything like that.
Yeah, and ultimately, my advice to people who are going into this beta looking at, do I purchase this game when it comes out, is if you have an issue with graphics or if you have an issue with weird mechanics or systems, it's okay. If you have an issue with how the gunplay is, if you have an issue with how the map is laid out, if you have an issue with the game mode, if you have any issues with the key core experiences, you should not buy this game. That is how you should go into this beta. If you're looking at it as this is going to be the deciding factor of my purchase for this game, don't look at it in terms of visual or kind of gameplay bugs. Look at it in terms of the wider scope. Go past that and say, okay, I hate how vehicle focused this game is. Then this is not going to be your game. You may want to wait until we see more of Portal or Hazard Zone. So that's definitely a deciding factor.
I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, having the ability to look past the the smaller issues is the way to figure out whether you actually like the game or not. Because both of us have said, like, there's a lot of bugs, there's a lot of things that are wrong with it, but I think both of us are going into it with that mindset of like, I don't care about the bugs. I just want to know, how does the core game actually feel? And that's all people need to worry about with the beta. It was the same with, for example, with Vanguard. I've been pretty loud about how much I didn't enjoy that, but that wasn't because of the bugs. It was because of the core, like, mechanics of the game. So that game had plenty of bugs too. But if the gameplay was really fun, I wouldn't have cared about the bugs. The bugs aren't an issue in a beta, but yeah, that you nailed it on the head. You just got to look at it from that perspective of looking past the bugs. Does the game feel fun? And if that's a yes, then it'll be worth buying, because they will fix the bugs and stuff eventually. Or if it's like you said, there's too many vehicles or the map's too big. If that's your issue with it, then it's probably not the game for you, to be honest.
Yep. But with that, overall, I think, me personally, I really like the core experience that we've had so far. Something I'm very interested to see, and I hope we get more details soon. We had a little bit of a tease today, but we'll get into that at a later point. But in terms of Hazard Zone, in terms of Portal, we still have those core experiences as well that they just have not showed off at all in terms of Hazard Zone. And there's not a whole lot of time left for that. So I think once we start getting that lull after the beta period, and they more than likely will stop talking, it's going to be, oh, what are they doing? What the heck? And then they'll surge up and they'll announce Hazard Zone or something like that.
Yeah. My guess is that, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself because we all know what that can lead to, but I reckon by the end of the month or early November, because they did essentially confirm it's in the game at launch, I think by the end of this month they will, whether they explain everything or whether they just like give us a quick trailer or something, I think we'll get our first look at it, hopefully.
Yep. We will know if it is going to actually be in the launch game or not at some point, either this month or in the week and a half leading up to the full release.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with that, overall, we detailed some of our thoughts, and man, this is so fun. I can't wait until we get a little more time post beta. Next episode, we're going to be talking about some of the stuff that's been going on. Hopefully we'll have some news. If not, we'll just get deeper into what was shown in the beta. But this is such an exciting time. We're leading up to an incredible launch, hopefully, of a great game, and really looking forward to it. We want to thank you all so much for listening, joining us. Sammy and I both have been getting so much love on our streams and our YouTube videos, and even on Twitter, people hopping in and just saying, hey, love the podcast, keep it up. People that have only listened to the podcast and recently discovered that we have YouTube channels, and it's like, oh, it's great to hear, and we really appreciate it. Sammy boy, on the stream today, I had a fellow Aussie says, shout out to tell Sammy I said hello in the chat. Legend. And yeah,
what a man.
We're worldwide, man.
You'll love to see it. It's been amazing. I was saying before we started recording that there's been a couple of the lads jumping into streams and saying like, oh man, I'm really excited for the podcast. I remember like as I was ending the stream yesterday, I had like 3 or 4 comments from people saying like, oh, you guys, what time's the podcast go up this week and stuff. So yeah, we definitely appreciate the love. It's gone way better than we thought it would. So yeah, your enjoyment just makes it all that much more enjoyable for us, really. And yeah, thank you guys a lot for all the support.
We really appreciate it. Also, Australia, you need to step up your game. Canada's got you beaten downloads by 1. So, but yeah, it's great to see, and it's great to hear all of the love and support that we've been getting, because it's something that Sammy and I both really enjoy doing, and it's been great to get this going. It's crazy to think we've been doing 16 episodes. Does not feel that long, but also feels like we've been doing it longer.
Yeah, that's true.
But with that, thank you all so much for the support. If you do enjoy this podcast and would like to support us completely free, sharing the podcast, it does great wonders, as well as leaving a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or wherever you find podcasts. If you can leave a review, helps us a bunch. Check out each of our individual channels, Sammy Boy, as well as Uplink Podcast. Come check us out. We've been putting out a bunch of content, streaming as well. And we'd like to thank Ethan Clark for the lovely, lovely thumbnail. As always, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the battlefield.